The horse and the rider. This is a concept borrowed from the Buddha that author and social psychologist Jonathan Haidt uses in his book, The Happiness Hypothesis, to describe the different distinct parts of the human mind, the two distinct parts of us, seemingly. If we think about the conscious, willfully acting, and rational part of the human mind as the rider, then the elephant would be the emotional, passionate, and intuitive part of us. One part of us would be forward-thinking and calculating. The other part would be emotional and reactionary and impulsive. Haidt says that most people make the mistake of assuming that there's a single actor in us, in the body, right? When actually there is really a committee of actors making decisions and vying for power and position. And I think this is a really good way to think about it, because really there is no single-minded person, really, the way we operate, whether it be this model, whether it be Freud's model, whether it be Jung's model. I think we need something to help us wrap our minds around the intricate nature of the human mind. And if we really want to get a handle on ourselves, if we really want to get a handle on our actions, our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, then I think we need some way to simplify the complex inner world of us. Haidt also points out that different parts of our brain developed at different points in our evolutionary history, which is why our ability to exercise rational and logical control over our actions is so limited, because it's likely the most recently evolved, the prefrontal cortex, the region where logical and rational decision making is housed. It is the most immature part of the brain, and it is likely the least evolved and least honed in, really, which is why, like I said, our rational decision making is limited compared to our desires and emotions and wills and whims, right? If we ever have any doubt about the power of the elephant in relation to the rider, all we have to think about is our efforts to exercise our control during a diet or a fast, right? We clearly can see ourselves being drawn to or incessantly thinking about sweets or something that isn't on the meal plan, while we are struggling to exercise control, rational, logical, willful control over our desires and actions to stay away from a sweet. Now, we may be able to if it's not in front of us, but if it's placed in front of us, it's very difficult for us to keep that elephant in check, because the elephant will just say, I want this, and it'll cause us to rationalize whatever it wants. It'll influence us. I agree with what most of Haidt says in this book, especially about the part about not being able to, or not trying to fight the elephant. We're just too weak by comparison relative to an elephant, really. Instead, what we should try to do is influence the elephant's motives and desires and direction, so that its motives are more closely aligned to what we know to be best for us long term. Not having the cookie, not having the cake, but actually foregoing that immediate gain of a snack and sugar reward, a high for a long-term health benefit, or whatever image, physical image or self-esteem boost that we want to gain. But if we've chosen to alter our desires, our elephant's desires, we can do so in a couple of ways. One of the easiest ways is to get the elephant to see the thing that it is desiring as disgusting or less optimal than what we are logically and rationally desiring with our, the rider. Disgust, pain, associating whatever it's desiring with some pain, whether it be physical or emotional pain. Like the pain from, failing your diet plan will be too great emotionally and personally, so the elephant's desires are more closely aligned to ours because it's avoiding pain, which pushes it back on the track of us wanting to, watch our calorie intake, our sugar intake, what have you. Now, Haidt claims that there's 3 ways that we can get a hold of ourselves, so we can see this distinction clearly. The first would be to meditate, the second would be to go to psychotherapy, psychoanalysis, and the third would be to take a drug. I prefer the first because it's powerful and effective, and it's free and it's cheap, right? And we have ready access to it. So when we meditate, I think the main thing, if we're trying to see this distinction between willful actions and indeliberate and unconscious actions, and I think the first thing we need to do is to try to gain some perspective, to see our thoughts and our motives more clearly, with a little bit of distance between us, emotionally, and our actions. And the way we do that, like I said, is to meditate, to still the mind, to still the thoughts, just long enough for us to see that some of these motivations, some of these actions are not in our long-term best interest. No matter what we do, if we do any investigation into the self, into the nature of us and how we behave, we're going to see some distinction, some duality. We're going to see, willful action and unwillful action. We're going to see left brain, right brain motives. We're going to see automatic and controlled responses. We're going to see old selves and new selves, rational and irrational thinking. We're going to see some distinction no matter what we do. And I know that it may be a blow to the ego, but it should be in our best interest. It should be not in our ego's best interest, but in our long-term life goal, overall quality of life best interest, to see that we're not always in control, that oftentimes we're led by things that are not, desires and drives that are coming from us, and they're not external, but they're coming from us, but they aren't in our best interest. Until we see this duality in our own nature, then I don't think we have much hope for getting a hold and getting a handle on ourselves, because we'll always be seeing everything that we want and desire as rational and justified. So what do you think about Jonathan Haidt's book, The Happiness Hypothesis? Did you like it? Did you not like it? If you have read it, let me know what you think below. If you haven't, then I can go into a little bit more depth into the other chapters that I barely, mentioned and touched on. I really only focused on the first 2 chapters of this book for this video's purposes. So let me know what you think. Leave me a comment in the section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one. You have a great day. Bye.